Hello and welcome to the Miss Rolling podcast. As usual, my name is Jacob Staten, and as usual, I'm joined by JJ Armstrong. JJ, how are you?
I'm surviving, despite it being an already tumultuous, hard word to say, week. It's only Tuesday, and it feels like a lot's gone on already this week. How are you doing?
I'm all right, mate. It has been a bit of a tumultuous week.
It was ambitious to go for a big word that early on in the podcast for someone as thick as myself, so it was worth a go.
No, it's been a good week, mate. Thank you. So, well, off the pitch, I suppose. No, not even off the pitch. That's where all the troubles lie. Before we jump into this kind of interim podcast, before anything's actually happened again, we're gonna let's start with a positive. We are sponsored by footballprizes.co.uk, which, if anyone's not seen before, it's an amazing place where you go buy a raffle type ticket for the chance to win, Forest, obviously Forest prizes. Last week was a signed Cheikh Kouyaté shirt.
It was a signed squad shirt with a double chance to win an instant prize of a Cheikh Kouyaté shirt.
And yeah, the positive is that somebody who a podcast listener actually won. So that's actually our second winner since we've been sponsored by Football Prizes. So I don't know if there's a specific Forest one this week, but head over there because there's all different types of cool stuff, including England stuff as well, if you are that way inclined, JJ.
Yes, all the links will be in the description. For those listening, if you head to our social media, we will post the links in our description. Not too short, Jacob's gesturing at on the screen.
To the description. That's where I'm pointing. That's where you should go.
Thankfully, yeah. So yeah, we'll keep posting them on social media when there is a Forest competition. So keep an eye out. They do some great stuff, and we're on a hot streak with people coming from us and winning. So you could be the next winner. Anyway,
it could
on
be
to
you.
the next stuff.
On to the
Can
next
we
stuff.
finally been off the Forest of Magic on and off the pitch song, Jacob? Is it now non-void? Because we're neither.
We're neither. So the financial fair play, or more accurately, the profitability and sustainability from the Premier League have declared that, we declared to them that we failed, didn't we? Or we were in breach, shall we say? Before we discuss it, we've got a bit of a background on the whole thing, just to give a bit of context to what we're talking about. So, Premier League clubs are permitted to lose £105 million over a 3-year period, which works out at £35 million a season. Yet Forest did not have £105 million to play with because they were in the Championship for the other 2 seasons that have been assessed. Therefore, their losses would be limited to £61 million, £13 million for each season, which was the 2020-21 and the 2021-22 seasons, and £35 million for 22-23, their first campaign back in the top flight for 23 years. I think before we say anything, we can all declare this to be absolute horse manure, that we are being straddled with these limitations. I kind of almost want to say, what's the point of getting promoted? We got promoted, and yes, we bought some Martin Luther Van Dross, as well as some great players. But surely the idea is to come up and, the capitalist utopia that we live in is that we spend money, the world keeps turning, and we have a good go at staying up. Right?
This is where I find the whole conversation and the whole idea of this just frustrating, because what you read out, which I think in itself feels complicated, but what you read out feels like an already unfair starting point for someone newly promoted if your first season in the Premier League is counted as part of a 3-year period and 2 of those seasons were in the Championship. I almost feel like either you're permitted the same amount of losses as a reward for going up, and therefore you're not limited just because you're in the Championship, because obviously you have to adhere to the Championship limitations, or your Premier League 3-year period starts once you get promoted, and that's year 1 almost. So I know that's not the way the rules work, and rules are rules, and we're in breach of that, and that is frustrating on so many levels, not just due to the rules, due to the personnel in charge of those matters at the club, but I just can't help but feel slightly hard done by. But I don't really want to play the hard done by card, because I think, those rules exist regardless, and they are hard done by to me, but they are there regardless, and we should have had an eye on them, and it's something that we should have certainly kept into account. So I just don't really understand why or how we've managed to do it, but it's very frustrating that we have.
I think there's some very interesting points to add as well. So one point is that Nick Randall was in one of his chief roles at Forest was to ensure that we don't fall victim to this. Obviously that went well. Cheers, Nick. Another one is that if we'd sold Brennan Johnson in Brentford in June to Brentford for 35 million, we wouldn't have been in breach. We held out an extra 2 months and sold him for 47.5, so an extra 12.5 million pounds. So we were technically only in breach for 2 months. The last interesting thing for me as well is that if you look at Forest's response to it, it's not that we are appealing it or anything like that. It's that we're going to be fully compliant in our assisting the Premier League in their investigation, which I think overall, given that those are the circumstances, I think we may come out of this with a slap on the wrist and like a suspended deduction and basically like don't do it again. If you think about the limitations we've had of only being able to lose 61 million and the fact that we're selling Brennan Johnson, which looks like was always the plan in pre-season, given that this is the case, would have kept us above that threshold. I think there's enough sense there for us to put forward a compelling argument to say we didn't really breach it. We only breached it for 2 months. Can we please, get suspended points deduction or something like that, or even just a fine?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't place blame solely on Mr. Randall. I think whilst it was a large focus and part of his job, I think to me this is evidence of a club without a clear or any strategy whatsoever. I think we've got what looks to be an ownership that are impatient. And whilst I would like to just say to the people that feel like you can't be both appreciative of the money and investment and ambition Marinakis shows, but also critical of how his money is spent, I'd just like to say you definitely can be both. I am very appreciative of his ambition and money spent, and he has got some really good stuff and has helped in getting us promoted. Not the sole reason, but it's certainly helped. And also critical of how he spent his money, because we've also had some not great players walk in. So some bizarre decisions that to me scream a club without a clear strategy, and that's why I think we're in this mess. And I don't think you can really place blame solely at Nick Randall, solely at Marinakis Jr., solely at Marinakis Sr., solely at Steve Cooper because he wanted John Joe Shelby and therefore everything's his fault. Like, this is not quite that clear. It's just a club not looking in the finer details and not sort of pulling in the right direction, I think. So that is a frustration to me, and that's why I think we maybe just need to be a bit smarter with how we operate going forward and maybe see this as our own warning not to play by our own rules. Equally, you follow that up, and this is why it's quite a nuanced thing. The Brennan Johnson sale being the sort of main factor to our argument here of, well, we could have sold him for 30 million. The player didn't want to go. We waited out. We got more money, which in turn therefore makes the club more sustainable if it's making that extra bit of money. That's not taken into account. So this is why it's a really confusing point. And I guess their argument back would be, well, what if Tottenham pulled out of the sale and therefore you didn't sell Brennan Johnson, then you're in further breach. And if we were going to breach it anyway, by the sounds of it, then I guess what's the point? But it does feel a little bit weird to me that something that's in place to sort of monitor sustainability doesn't look at waiting 2 extra months for an extra 17 million as being more sustainable.
Yeah, that's where I think our argument will lie. And I I think clearly the Premier League are getting hot on this with what happens with Everton early this season. I think they're clearly going to try and drop the hammer very heavily on Man City. I think given how it's happened and the fact we got promoted, the fact we were operating in different circumstances to every other team that's been felt the sting of this, I think we may get some leniency. But yeah, it's going to be an interest. I think the maximum points deduction is 6. I think
It's not. I think it's maximum in terms of our breach. It's obviously scalable dependent on how much you breach it by. So if it's a high one, obviously 10 points is what Everton had. I think, it doesn't have to be 10. I think they can scale it dependent on how much you
Yeah.
actually breach it by. But I think minimal breaches, which it looks like is a category we fall under, tends to be fine, 3.6 points. So, I mean, I cannot tell you profit sustainability or financial fair play, whatever you want to call it, certainly no expert in. I've seen loads of people try on Twitter to get their heads around it, and I think it's just a really complex subject. And it sounds like we've hired a really good lawyer to help combat our defence. So let's hope, he is as good as everyone says. He's been called the Messi of lawyers. So a drop shoulder and a nice slap on the wrist will do me. But I guess we'll see. It's really hard to predict because nobody really knows. And we don't know our punishment. And that's another thing. That seems a bit of a shambles because whether it's true or not, from what I read yesterday, there is the potential, given an appeal, to find out the result of your outcome and punishment after the season has ended. So you could end the season not knowing what league you're going to be competing in the season after. So that seems a shambles. And then the rules are changing in August anyway. So I don't really understand it. It doesn't make much sense to me, and it all just feels like a complete and utter shambles.
I agree. I mean, I've never really agreed with any of the FFP protocols or anything like that. I mean, I don't really understand how you can limit somebody wanting to invest something in their business. We don't do it in any other sector, really. It just seems a bit odd to me, and it's clearly not doing what it's meant to do because we've come up, spent money to try and stay up, we've stayed up, and we're being punished. How else are we supposed to, where's the fair play in that? If we'd come up and not spent any money, gone straight back down and had a torrid season in the championship, we could be, theoretically, we could be sat bottom of the championship right now. Are you telling me that's fair? That would be fair, but this isn't. It's and I also have a complete and utter disregard. I completely and utterly disagree that you shouldn't be able to give point deductions to clubs. It only punishes the fans. It only punishes the fans. Marinakis could get a 6-point deduction and go, right, well, I've had enough of this and sell up, and then he's done forever. It doesn't matter to him. We could get a 6-point deduction and we get relegated, and where this dream of being back in the Premier League is gone because of money, which is the thing that they're trying to make football not about.
Well, football is certainly about money to me. That seems more and more as time goes on. It seems to be all about that, which is obviously a shame to see. And it almost feels like you're punished for doing well, getting out the Championship, and you get up with, due to the implications and the financial strain in the Championship, you have to use loans and etc. to help yourself get up. And because of that, your squad's threadbare, and then you need to invest in order to have a good chance of staying up. So you're punished for trying, and you're sort of punished for doing well, which doesn't really sit right with me. And yes, we've broken the rules. Regardless, the rules are in place. And like I say, I don't fully agree with them, and I don't think they're the fairest rules out there, but we still have. So that's why it's frustrating to me. And with hindsight, you can look back at a list of players that just haven't worked out in a crazy, chaotic strategy. And I know there's caveats to it of we did get up with a threadbare squad, mostly loans, so therefore we had to sign it. But I still think there's a compromise of somewhere in between where we did, what we did, and what we could have done that certainly might have helped us a little bit. So, yeah, I think I'll go back to the same word, which is frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got a list of players here, JJ, which
yes, this is
for you.
This is the list of players that I personally have identified as ones that haven't worked out. I'm sure there's more. People might have their own opinions on some that have worked out of this list or some that haven't. But when you just look at 22-23 season, you've got Emmanuel Dennis, Lewis O'Brien, Omar Richards, Remo Freuler, Julian Biancon, Hwang Yu-jo, Josh Bowler, Jesse Lingard, Wayne Hennessy, Loic Bardet, John Joe Shelby, Gustavo Scarpa, and Ayew. A lot of poor, at the time, naturally, we were obviously excited about a few of those names. With hindsight, it's not worked out that way. Same with deadline day this season. At the time, people will say, well, you weren't complaining when they were all flooding in on deadline day. And at the time, yeah, you're right, loved it. But that was because we were under the assurance from club media of videos they put out, with a Q&A with the Supporters Trust, saying they've got a keen eye on financial fair play and we're completely fine with it. So a lot of hindsight obviously included within that, but it just showcases a not very smart strategy to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was looking at that list thinking Emmanuel Dennis seemed like a good sign at the time. Lewis O'Brien
Wanted
seemed
him.
like it was a risk-free, low-value signing. So we got Toffolo at the same time. If we'd have gone back down, they'd have been great players for the Championship. Omar Richards, I think, was a risk worth taking. It unfortunately, he signed with a broken leg.
Yeah,
Remo Freuler,
that's exactly where the risk isn't worth taking when you sign someone with a broken leg.
that's why
How
you have
has
to
that
fight
not been
after for
identified?
your physical, folks.
Yeah.
Sorry, Remo Freuler, I think was fantastic first half of the season, so I wouldn't have put him on that list.
He didn't work
Biancon,
out.
no,
He
he,
didn't
no,
work out.
no.
I thought he was a good player. He was maybe one of the harsher ones on there, but still.
Yeah. Biancon got the unfortunate ACL injury, didn't he? Huang Yuzhou, again, you're quite right. I don't get that. Josh Bowler, I think, should have been in the squad and probably given a go. Jesse Lingard, with the best intentions, and it seemed like he did a lot off the pitch, but yeah, I imagine he was on a frightening amount of money. Wayne Hennessy, probably harsh to be on there. He's only a backup keeper, isn't he? Bardet.
Well, he can't be that. I mean, backup keeper when we needed a keeper after our main keeper was injured, he wasn't trusted, and we had to get someone else in on a lot of money. So I think that is also a mistake.
Okay. Bardet is an interesting one. He was a loan, so I hope that we didn't spend any money, if any, not a lot, if any at all. Shelby, yeah, that really upset me when I found out that he was a full-on Steve Cooper request. That really,
Yeah, that is
really,
poor.
that didn't hurt. That hurt me a lot. Gustavo Scarpa, flattered to deceive. I think possibly under different circumstances could have worked out. I know he had a bit of stuff in his personal life. I think he had a kid and he got scammed out of £1 million, didn't he? So
yeah,
that kind of thing.
Never a good time, is it?
No, Andre Ayew, the manager trusts him, so I get it. But yeah, he was an absolute waste of a shirt whenever he played. And then you've put Divock Origi for this season. Absolutely, I think he's been a bit unlucky with injuries, but yeah, it's just
obviously up for debate. People might have their own specific opinions on these players, but I just think personally they're ones that, with hindsight, I'm going to say that again. No one's an expert of hindsight. Well, everybody's an expert of hindsight, actually. That you can tell when these players haven't worked out, and it's unfortunately been a waste of money. Whether you wanted them at the time, whether you thought they were doing okay at the time, in the long run, it just hasn't worked out.
Yeah, absolutely. So if there's any that you think we've missed as well, let us know in the comments. That'd be great. So I think that's probably enough for the FFP misery. Onto the misery of a FA Cup replay against Blackpool tomorrow night, which is on ITVX at 7:45. Is that right, JJ?
It's on ITV4 as well as ITVX for the people that want their channels. ITV4, I don't know if there's a HD channel now, but I used to hate it watching football on that because it was standard definition. So hopefully there's a good quality HD ITV4 channel out there. But yes, our winter break has been cut short and made non-existent by a trip to Blackpool.
Winter break is mad, isn't it? Sorry. So we and JJ have put together our starting 11s, haven't we, Joshua? And a bit of a reasoning why. JJ, who's are you showing first?
So I'll go for mine first because mine's a little bit more normal. So there's a graphic on screen for those watching, as you know, because you're watching. But for those listening, I'll read it out position by position and I'll say why. But I've gone for pretty much what Nuno's done so far. Spoilers, Jacob's for some reason gone mental and done his own thing, but I'm trying to predict Nuno here, and also throw in some things that I would like to see. So in goal, I'm going to stick with Lacademos. I think he warrants another game. Obviously, didn't really crown himself in glory, but Turner hasn't either. The news today is that due to the FFP things, we need to be a bit more cautious with our spending. So therefore, we're going to stick by our two keepers, which is terrifying news. So I think trying to get him a run of games and see if he can eventually build up enough confidence to not make as many howlers as Turner is probably worth doing. So I think he warrants keeping his position in net. At right back, I've gone for Montiel. I think he had an okay game last time. I think he showcased some brilliant attributes in his games against Man U and Newcastle. He looked a real good player. Didn't show as many of them against Blackpool, but I think it's worth, again, trying to get some minutes in these players. So, got your cough, Jacob. So, I think he warrants a start. I've stitched myself up by putting a centre-back pairing of Murillo and Omabamidele, which I find difficult to say, but I think Worrell flattered to deceive, possibly on the list of people that are going out of the club. And we just need to see him at some point. So why not? There's no point in being sat on the bench. I know there's the caveat of if he plays, then he's cup tied, and does anyone want him? And actually, if he plays, he's played for both Norwich and Forest in the same season. So can he go elsewhere?
Nope.
Not too sure. Does that include Europe or just in general?
I think it's anyone under FIFA regulations, but yeah, you definitely can't go anywhere in this country.
Fair. Well, we need to decide, are we playing him or not? And it's a lot of money to not play him. So I think it'd be good to see him in this. We need a solid partnership at the back whilst the AFCON players are gone. So let's try these two. I think they're quite like-minded people, so it might be a bit chaotic. I think Murillo maybe needs a more experienced centre-back beside him, but I don't think Felipe can walk anymore, so not too sure if that's going to work out. So Felipe's fit. I would put him in, but I think it's just worth seeing these two in a cup game. Yeah. Left back, I've gone for Nico Williams. I think Toffolo's done nothing wrong, but obviously he was subbed off at half-time for Tavares last week, so why not experiment with that position? See, Williams is a bit of a utility fullback, and we've had Aina in that position as well, so let's see how he does. He can play that side. I think he's stronger on the right, but I think why not, see what he's like compared to Toffolo. Two in midfield, I've gone for Yates and Mangala. I think at the moment, Yates picks himself. He's a battler. He wins the fouls and he gets the team moving. And I've not been that impressed with Danilo in recent weeks. He's shown spells, but not been brilliant. And I think prior to that, Mangala has been one of our best performing players. So I'd like to see him get a chance under Nuno. Obviously, there's whispers of him going to various teams. Juventus are one, Galatasaray are another. Someone else entered the race today that I just can't remember who it is. So it looks like he's out. The bid today from the club that came in was, I think it was 25 million euros option to buy with after a loan. So apparently Marinakis rates him higher than that. But I think for me, I'd certainly keep him. Easy to say when it's not my money and we're not in. We're talking about financial fair play restrictions, so maybe it's one we have to do. But I think whilst the players are away in AFCON, if he's on loan with the option to buy in the summer anyway, let's just keep him till the summer. That's my thoughts. And then three in front of them are Hudson-Odoi, Gibbs White and Dominguez. I think they pick themselves with news that Alanga's possibly out for a long time. Of course he is. I've just put him into my fantasy football after using my wild card, so why wouldn't he be? I think they have all sort of picked themselves, these three, so I think they've been brilliant. And then up top, Chris Wood, because basically we've got no one else, but also, he's impressed me recently. So that's what I've gone for. A typical Nuno style as what he's done in recent weeks, resting a few players, trying out a few new things, and I still think it's plenty strong enough to win that game and hopefully get us into the next round. Thoughts, Jacob? Any criticisms there?
No, none at all, mate. None at all. I think it's maybe two players different from mine. I think it's we discussed the podcast after the Blackpool game, after the home tie. I think Yates should have been partnered with Mangala rather than Danilo. I love Dominguez on left wing. I think we do miss Alanga. He's clearly got something creative wise. But yeah, no criticisms whatsoever, mate.
Okay, well, over to yours. I'm about to put a graphic on screen. When Jacob sent me this through, I didn't really know what he was doing. I thought we were trying to predict Nuno. He's predicted someone completely different. So, Jacob, talk us through it and read it out for those that are listening.
So, I don't think this is as crazy as JJ's made out, but I've basically gone for what Nuno played at Wolves with the back three or the back five. It looks a bit odd on the screen. Now you show me. It looks a bit like an upside down sword, but So I've gone for Vlachodimos in goal, 3 centre-backs of Joe Worrell, Andrew Omobamidele, Murillo, Montiel right wing back, Toffo left wing back, with Yates, Mangala and Dominguez in midfield, with Gibbs White behind Chris Wood. I think this is more akin to what he did at Wolves. I think he will use the opportunity for a back three for stability. I think there's a bit of a chance of, given how well Blackpool played, of being caught out away. They want that extra defensive structure. But yeah, I think the only change is Toffolo for Williams, and who did you have instead of? Who am I missing from your team? Oh, I haven't got Callum Hudson-Odoi. I've got Joe Warren instead for the back five. But yeah, I just a bit more stability. You know, I have a feeling Joe Warren won't leave. He's only just signed a new contract as well, hasn't he? So I don't know. I just thought a bit more stability at the back away from home, a chance for Omobamidele and Murillo to play with each other. I think that's probably the future of our centre backs. But yeah, I don't know. I think it sets us up. I think we're probably possibly a bit too defensive away from home with this, but I just thought it'd be more stable.
Would you not rather just go for it, be attacking away from home in the cup against Blackpool, and if you go out, you go out?
I would have preferred to do that in the home leg.
Yeah.
If we've got to go and play a replay, play it properly. That's what I'd.
Okay. And I think in terms of Worrell going that point, I just think, personally, I think it's best for everyone if it's time to move on. If he doesn't, I'm going to say, I really hope he proves us all wrong. But I think given the circumstances, it's possibly his time, but I don't think he can go unless an adequate replacement has been made, because obviously January leaves us quite short with options, considering Omobamidele, hasn't played for us yet, so he's relatively unknown quantity. Worrell's had his problems. McKenna's going. Felipe's apparently injured. So we're thin on the ground without Niakate and Bolly. So a good replacement coming in before he goes is probably needed. So I'm not sure I can see that happening, given what we've mentioned about financial fair play. So be interesting to see how that develops.
Yeah, I suppose another aspect of the financial fair play thing is that it feels like we're very much like we're stuck with Vlachodimos and Turner, doesn't it?
Well, that was the news that was released earlier, is that we have to be a bit more cautious with it. So therefore, we're going to stick with the two keepers, which I think every Forest fan or Forest content creator would have said that that's a position that we desperately need to change. So concerning, but I guess let's hopefully get Vlachodimos running games and see if he can do any better than Turner did with a run of games, because I still find Vlachodimos a weird keeper, because I don't think he's actually done anything right or wrong, but has obviously let in quite a few goals. So bizarre situation, really.
I completely get it. I know I'm. If I had to pick one, I think I said it last time, I'd pick Vlachodimos. Just my opinion. Mainly because I can't, like you said, I don't think he's done anything wrong, but I don't think he's done anything right. Whereas Matt Turner, I don't have enough fingers to count the mistakes that he's made, and those mistakes aren't just mistakes; they're mistakes that directly lead to goals. So yeah, it's Vlachodimos for me, but yeah, I completely get people who would say that Turner's a good shot stopper and that kind of thing. I just think it's not exclusive to say he's a good shot stopper. You've got to also be able to kick a ball up a pitch.
Correct. Any score predictions for this game? Have your thoughts changed?
3-1 Forest. You?
I'll take a 2-0. I'll take a nice, comfortable game with no injuries, please. And let's just focus on the next game, which is coming up, which is, of course, Brentford, Jacob.
Oof. Slides us in. Yeah. I think you described it earlier as is this game even bigger due to the FFP situation? I don't really think so. I think in the grand scheme of things, this won't be the game that makes or breaks us. However, I think that if we were to come out of this game with 3 points, the impact that would have on the fans and the club in general would be huge. I don't think a loss is devastating, but I think a win is does something really, really positive for the club.
Yeah, obviously, when Everton had their points deduction, there was a few games immediately after being announced where everyone was behind the team, knew that they had to, and they sort of used it as a reason to just go for it. So they picked up a few really good results, and I hope that sort of makes us kick on as well. I think it's a big game. I don't think the game's any bigger due to financial fair play stuff. I think it's a big game when you look at the narrative of the table. Brentford are one place below us on 16th with 1 point less. They haven't won they've lost their last 5 games, so they're sliding down. Now, naturally, there's one player that's going to be talked about returning, which I think everyone's slightly concerned about, which is Ivan Toney. And he is an elite striker. He shouldn't be at Brentford. He should certainly be at a top half of the table club for sure. Maybe even could be argued top 6. He's very, very good. Obviously, he's going to be lacking some match sharpness. I've been seeing clips of him banging some goals in for his behind closed doors friendlies and B team games and blah, blah, blah. So there is that, but obviously that's not quite the pace of Premier League game. So I don't know. Brentford are playing in the cup, aren't they, against Wolves? I don't know if that's tonight.
They've got a replay. It's either tonight or tomorrow, isn't it?
So it'll be interesting to see if he is starting for them. It'll be interesting to see if he is. Let me just look. He's not starting, and he's not even on the bench. So that's interesting.
He can't play until the 18th.
Right, okay. Well, that's why. Told you. I was just testing you, Jacob. So there's that. So obviously, I don't know if they're going to just chuck him in straight away in a Premier League game. I think that's quite risky, but he is very good. He's going to be hungry to prove a point, so that is a worry. But more importantly, they don't have Mbeumo, they don't have Rico Henry, and they are 2 players that made them tick alongside Toney. So they have still got some good players. I rate quite a few of them. Keane Lewis-Potter, Josh De Silva, Ben Mee. There are some very good players in there still.
For Aja, he's pretty good as well.
Yes. Collins is good. Damsgaard is good. But I think purely on paper, I think we've got enough in our squad to be better. Well, certainly with the AFCON players back. But I think at the minute it would be quite a close affair. But I think we just about edge it on paper. But football isn't played on paper. So I think 3 points and just, pushing that gap a bit higher is definitely needed at this time. And also it's 3 less points to worry about in terms of a potential points deduction. So I really hope we can get the dubby, as the kids say.
Get that win. So, JJ, if you really hope we can get that win, what do you think the score will be?
I'm going to once again go with 2-0. I'm going to say
2-0 the Reds.
2-0 to the mighty Nottingham Forest. I think it will be a tough game, but I think given the players that they are missing, even though we're missing some, I think given the narrative of the sort of financial fair play, I think we're going to have our bit between the teeth. I think we're going to go for them, and I hope it's 2-0.
I'm going to go 2-2. I think it would be a positive result, but I don't know. I think they'll be buoyed by the fact that they've got Toney back, and like I say, he's a top quality striker.
Yes.
It's kind of maddening to me when you see that Man United bought that Rasmus Højlund for 90 million, and yet Ivan Toney plays for Brentford.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be there much longer.
No.
It wouldn't at all shock me if he went to Arsenal and then played against us, scored a few goals against us because they're coming up. So, I think a point just on that, if it was 2-2, I think a point is a really positive result. I think any points away from home, given where we were at last season, is positive. We just need to pick up points, and if we can't win, don't lose is essentially it. So would obviously love 3 points, goes without saying, but I think I would not be mad if we picked up a point away.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you're joining us for the first time, thank you very much for finding us. We really appreciate it. And if you've come back again and again and again and again and again and again and again, God knows we love you. You Reds.